we will talk about Mel Tucker. I'm fascinated by what's happening in Michigan State when you consider that administration, everything that they've gone through over the last few years to be dealt with this scandal, and to see who's riding in to save the day during the suspension is fascinating. But first,
and also it's a crazy scandal that a guy who got a giant contract after making Michigan State matter for 1 year because he had Walker, one of the best running backs I've ever seen.
He recruited very well.
And he got $90 million.
He now has a scandal on. He now has. He's going to be fired. It looks like, although right now it's just a suspension.
Okay, let's talk about this, and we can table Week 1 NFL overreactions. We'll push that to the next segment. But let's talk about Mel Tucker. Here's what we know: there was the internal HR department was notified of this in December of 2022. We don't know how well known this was throughout the athletic department, throughout the administration. We know that there's been some back and forth. We know that Mel Tucker has admitted to masturbating on the phone with someone that he brought in to educate players on compliance issues and sexual harassment. She herself is a survivor of a sexual assault. Mel Tucker, who is a married man, been married for 20 years, has admitted to masturbating on the phone, but says in his own defense that everything was on the up and up with that I was not violating this person, nothing. This was totally consensual, and there's some disagreement and an investigation ongoing right now. Mel Tucker, after 1 good year at Michigan State, did sign close to a $90 million extension.
Brenda Tracy, the woman who is accusing him of the non-consensual phone sex, is a really well-known speaker who goes to universities and talks to athletic departments about sexual assault and consent especially. And so she was operating as a vendor of the university, providing her services to the university, and they pay her for it. So that's why this comes up as a Title IX investigation, because I think he admitted he did it. There's no question there. He said he masturbated while on the phone with this woman, that it was consensual. But regardless, that's not behavior that you can partake in with an employee. That is a extreme lack of judgment, and she claims that it was not consensual at all. So now you have a sexual harassment.
And she's super credible, and he's incentivized here to look like he doesn't have any credibility and needs to protect his dollars.
A very well known officer amongst the athletic department. She tours the nation. She's spoken down here in Miami a couple times.
And in the USA Today investigation, he seemed to have basic facts wrong about where he was when it happened. He seemed to bring into question her credibility with her sexual assault that happened decades ago that she talks about when she visits college campuses. And the entire thing makes him look, I think, really bad and puts the university in a position where they're still reeling from the Larry Nassar scandal. People within the university and outside of the university were not happy about the way that they handled it and did not think that they were very there were felony charges brought on people involved in that situation that didn't report it correctly. And we all kind of remember all that. It happened less than 5 years ago. But this coming off of the heels of that, I think has also called into question why this timeline is the way it is, why the investigation took place this summer and the hearing on the matter isn't until October, and what the athletic director knew, and maybe he didn't know anything because it's a Title IX investigation. They don't have to report. They're not supposed to report the details to the athletic department. So there are still questions about who knew what at what point. But it does appear that he is going to be fired, and right now he's suspended without pay.
Those were the initial reports, too. There were reports that he was going to be fired, and then later on there was clarifications that there was this investigation, so he'd be suspended without pay. In the meantime, I don't know how long this has been going on. They were notified in 2022.
So their athletic director spoke yesterday in a 10-minute press conference that they abruptly ended after 10 minutes, where they later came out and said they didn't realize all the details until the USA Today article came out. They gave absolutely zero answer about how long they've known this, but they have known since 2022 for sure.
That there was a complaint, not necessarily what the complaint was, or that there was a complaint against Mel Tucker. But what was weird was that in the press conference they didn't say that.
They said nothing. Like, they basically went out there because they felt like they had to go out there. They went 10 minutes. Reporters were still, like, yelling questions at the AD as he walked off because they ended it so quick.
And there is circumstantial evidence. If you want to poke holes into who knew, how long did they know, there was a large jettisoning of talent from Michigan State. Keon Coleman looks incredible for Florida State. He was a two-sport athlete for Michigan State. Mel Tucker was doing the things that was getting Boulder, Colorado excited about football before he left very quickly for a big contract over Michigan State. And then I think they won a Peach Bowl in year one with Kenneth Walker, who's now in the NFL, and things were looking like they were going to be
They
sustainable.
were great. He was a Heisman candidate. They lost one game all season. We were talking about Michigan State for the national championship, for the big dollars. Mel Tucker gets paid a giant amount. Hugely credible for turning over a program in 1 year. Now it just takes 2 games for Dion, but turning over a program in 1 year.
Yeah, he was a face of, you can turn over a roster inside of 1 year.
But-
This is who you
Okay,
want to
but
do
this
job.
university having this scandal, and then there's the bonus of, good God, these details, like, how much of a fool are you? These details where the woman that you're doing this with, allegedly, is the one on the entire campus and the entire region that is the more credible one here. She's here to help you with these matters. How could you be doing this with her? Like,
And then
what-
attacking her credibility afterwards.
But
I mean,
I'm just saying, Michigan State has the credibility problem before you're starting, and now with the details that you're giving me, you're making it sound like, on the timeline, that the university, before giving him all that money, knew that that crime was being alleged. Like, I don't know what the truth is here, but
It was after, but there's a lot of things now where you can look back on the timeline and wonder aloud who knew what, because there are a lot of puzzling decisions and a lot of talent that's left that program. Granted, there's just not a very good energy surrounding Michigan State for very obvious reasons, given the recent history.
But it is bothersome that programs, whenever they get into trouble and get into situations like this, the higher you go, the less they knew. The athletic director, I had no idea that was going on. I didn't know the details until I read it in USA Today. Same thing happened at Northwestern, by the way. I didn't know the details until the student newspaper unearthed the details as to what was going on in our athletic department. How about you're the AD? Know what's going on in all your sports programs. Everything.
but especially
all
if
of
it's-
it.
But especially if it's this.
Yes.
In defense of that, there are human resource issues why it might be kept away from the athletic director. I don't know that much about this, but if this is solely an investigation of the Title IX department and it's being reported on by USA Today, while the optics are absolutely terrible, when it seems as though USA Today knows more about your own internal investigation than you do, there are reasons for this legally.
Michigan State, though, is a university that cannot come out there, give a 10-minute presser, and just go away. Like, this is a university that has a responsibility more than most to handle these things very, very seriously. Like, it's mind-blowing to me how it keeps happening there.
But handle these things very seriously. If we're talking about, for segment after segment, the commerce of football and who gets trampled here by the machine, by the giant business machine. When you say, what's it protecting? It's always the program, and the program's always protecting the money. Like, that tramples every one of every gender. And the kings at the top making the most money, and they're the coaches. They're not the presidents. They're not the athletic directors, the bosses on campus. Mel Tucker, if he's bringing that kind of attention to your library, to your business, holy, can you believe Sparty was 10-1 this year?
Yeah. There are variables to this story that make it unique and particularly difficult for Mel Tucker to survive. Look, Mel Tucker isn't going to be the first or last head football coach to have an extramarital affair. And if it's consensual, most times in history, it's been something that's been able to be navigated. But the judgment, specifically with this officer in particular, that he's already admitted to, is certainly something that's very inappropriate. You're sitting on that information, and you're Michigan State, and you have your past at play. I don't see how he coaches another game there. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, what I read most recently last night from Dan Murphy at ESPN was that because this is a Title IX investigation, it is the trauma-informed response to not let people outside of the investigation know what's happening, because then they can't tamper with the investigation or put pressure on anyone who's part of the investigation. So I'm not saying that they didn't know, because we all know that in business, like, there's a lot at stake. People don't follow the rules a lot of the time, but it's very possible that they didn't know and that they did find out Saturday, which again is still a terrible look. Obviously, it's a terrible look because for whatever reason this came out in USA Today, like it not being before this whole thing was wrapped up is a bad look. Why did it take so long to do this to the point where it became news that you found out about in a newspaper?
One of the things I am confused about, though, forgive me for the interruption, because I just think there's so much money involved with the protection of not just Mel Tucker's contract, but also the program that has to protect the money. To see that today, as we discuss these details being possibly true, these details, no matter who is he said, she said, just these details, I find it fairly remarkable that for reasons other than legal, this person still has a job. And I understand it's innocent until proven guilty, but I'm just saying, people talking about your program this way after what happened at your program, like, you better be a lot better than 10-1. You better be Saban.
The reason that he is still there is because of the money. They're waiting for the end of this Title IX investigation because they don't want to pay his buyout.
But that's what I'm saying is when you talk about, I don't know what's true here either, but good.
Well, you do know certain things that have been admitted to.
Yes, I know those things, but those things alone sound to me like things that could be fireable. And if I told the public that they were so, the public would say he should no longer have a job at Michigan State. They're that inappropriate.
It's an important conversation. I'm glad we're having it, but I'd like to overreact.
All right, we'll do that next.